All right. Hi, my name is Lauren, and the graphic novel that I chose to read is called Stoker and Wells, The Order of the Golden Dawn. Um, it is a graphic novel, it's not a compilation of any sort. It's the first in what is actually going to be a trilogy, from what I understand. In the back of the comic, which I did have a digital version, or the graphic novel, it talks about how it was originally a screenplay, and that the writer, Stephen Peros, originally wanted to make it like a movie or a TV show, and apparently he went to NYU for film school, and so he's primarily focused on film. The illustrator is actually a family friend of the author, so it was more of a passion project, which makes sense because it looks like it was originally a Kickstarter, which I thought was really interesting, and you could kind of see that in some of the lettering, because there's not a lot of captions. There's not a lot of sound effects or exposition, so it doesn't really read like a traditional comic book that I'm used to, or like the graphic novels that I've read. The mostly have been like The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, where there's a lot of sound effects and there's a lot of captions. This was primarily dialogue. There were some spelling errors and some random grammar things that were a little bit distracting, but nothing too crazy. As I'm sitting here kind of flipping through, there's like one sound effect. I think that's like the only sound effect in the entire graphic novel. Oh, I'm wrong. We have another one. There's an explosion. And so it is 100 pages. It was originally published, I've got some information pulled up on my computer here, by Gal Pictures LLC, which is, I believe, a private company, obviously, since it was a Kickstarter. So basically what happens, it's not historically accurate at all, which I'm primarily a historian, so it was kind of weird reading it, because it is technically about Bram Stoker and H.G. Wells, and so the story kind of combines their basic narrative of a vampire and a time machine. But I like what he did with the characters. I think that both the two main male characters, as well as the additional female character that Bram and H.G. Wells meet in the future, have really interesting character arcs. They meet this girl named Nina, who is part of this futuristic race of the LOI who don't really have a leader, but she is really strong, she's really powerful. She kind of takes over in the middle of Act 2 of the story, and she starts kind of making the decisions. She's the one who's helps them escape when who's gonna become Count Dracula kidnaps them and is planning to eat them. She saves them from these Marlocks that are trying to eat them and have been eating her people. And so she really becomes the hero towards the end of Act 2. And so Act 3 is kind of her kicking everybody's butt. And then you've got Bram Stoker, who his character arc concludes with realizing that this person from the future who has kidnapped him is actually the vampire who was eating him while he was a child, but he blocked it out conveniently. But then he gets to chop his head off, and he decides that he's going to revisit Count Dracula as a way to work through some of that trauma. So that's pretty cool for him. And then H.G. Wells has a really cool character arc, because at the beginning he's a bit of a womanizer. He doesn't really do the writing like he's supposed to do, and so he meets Bram Stoker because he's originally going to try to play for him, and I don't actually remember how they met in real life, and I can guarantee that this is not, like I said, this is not what actually happened. There are arguments that Count Dracula was actually supposed to be based on Oscar Wilde, which is fascinating and a completely different video. But by the end of the book, H.G. Wells is now a writer who is ready to write novels. He has ideas. He's kind of built like a really quick and under 48 hours relationship with Nina. And so I feel like in the next book, there's a chance that he's not going to be as much of a womanizer as he appears to be at the beginning, but he definitely finds his footing. He gives this really epic speech at the beginning of the third act, and it's really dramatic, and he comes back and he's kind of ready to do everything again. One of the interesting things, like I said, that because this was originally written as a screenplay, is that in terms of the transitions from MacLeod's book, there's a lot of action to action movement, and then there's scene to scene movement, which are the main points. There's not a lot of subject to subject movement within the panels, just because you've got a lot of characters all talking at the same time, all being like part of scenes here. And so there's not really, there's no reason to be skipping panels here, because they're talking to each other. And I did like the way that the lettering handled that. I'm trying to find my good example here of going back and forth. It was really great. It was easy to follow. It was easy to know who was saying what. I do wish there had been some more captions kind of explaining things, and I wish that there had been some thought bubbles. I would have liked to have, had a better understanding of what was going through the heads of some of the characters who don't actually talk. There are some pretty cool things that show up a lot, and that's these like mini panel overlays on the larger panels. They were really great to look at, and they were a lot of fun to look at. There was a lot of overlay and playing with the way that the pictures interact with each other. There was one scene at the beginning of the comic or of the graphic novel where you have Bram Stoker as like this massive figure, and throughout the graphic novel, he's kind of referred to as this like great big Irish bear, which he was Irish, and so it makes sense. But he like towers over the page while the rest of the panels work around him, and so I found that really lovely. I thought they also did a really great job of time travel, which was really neat. It was fun to look at. It was really pretty, and it made sense for a story that's about going to the future and battling vampires in post Y3K London. It was logical, as silly as that sounds. It was very easy to suspend disbelief, especially knowing about these characters. I would recommend it. It was a lot of fun. I thought the title was misleading because it does refer to the Order of the Golden Dawn. That kind of shows up at the beginning. That's it. That's how they find out about the time machine. But I think that the book could have had way more fun with that. But it also would have been a lot longer. Basically, I'm trying to think if there was anything else. The artwork was a little inconsistent. The characters didn't necessarily look the same from panel to panel, which was kind of distracting, especially with Nina. I could tell that the illustrator had spent much more time working with Bram and Hector, which is fine. I mean, they're the main characters, and they're pretty cool dudes. And like I said, Nina gets a really cool character arc, so it's okay. But I would have liked to have seen a little more consistency with like some of the action scenes. That was a little distracting. Their like faces had some really weird expressions. But other than that, I think that's all I have to say. Like I said, my fun facts is that actually Bram Stoker was Irish, and it's believed that he wrote Dracula about Oscar Wilde, not about an actual time machine. And H.G. Wells was actually familiar and friends with Oscar Wilde, as well as Ravi Ross, who was the main person in Oscar Wilde's life. But yeah, so I'm about at my 12 minutes, and I really enjoyed reading it, and I'm looking forward to reading the next one, and I think that you guys will enjoy it as well. So thanks for watching. Bye.